بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين سبقت لهم منا الحسنى أولئك عنها مبعدون لا يسمعون حسيسها وهم فيما اشتهت أنفسهم خالدون لا يحزنهم الفزع الأكبر وتتلقاهم الملائكة هذا يومكم وتتلقاهم الملائكة هذا يومكم الذي كنتم توعدون يوم نطوي السماء كطي السجل للكتب كما بدأنا أول خلق نعيده وعدا علينا إنا كنا فاعلين ولقد كتبنا في الزبور من بعد الذكر أن الأرض يرثها عبادي الصالحون إن في هذا لبلاغا لقوم عابدين وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين صدق الله العظيم. Surah Al-Fatiha. Talqeen is where the Qari reads it loud and everybody repeats after him. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
الحمد لله رب العالمين.
الحمد لله رب العالمين.
الرحمن الرحيم
الرحمن الرحيم
مالك يوم الدين
مالك يوم الدين
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين
إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم
اهدنا الصراط المستقيم
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم
صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم
غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين
غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. As you all know, that after Salatul Maghrib, at the Adhan of Maghrib actually, the most holy nights in the entire year will start, which is the Ashr Awakhir of Ramadan. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regarding the entire month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ayyaman ma'dudat. Ayyaman ma'dudat. The literal meaning is days of counting. But if I were to make it easier to understand, that these are very limited days. Meaning each and every night you should be counting. And hold yourself to accountability that what did you do in every night? And if you were wasting your time in the last 20, then you should be regretting what you did and turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my message today, if you were to remember anything from this short talk that I will give, is that no matter how many times you fall back, always go back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because He loves us more than our own mother 70 times. Think about it. If any of you were to get into an issue with your mother or your father, and many times everyone has, even if you ask your parents for forgiveness, sometimes they don't feel like forgiving you. Sometimes they don't feel like looking at your face. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like that. If you were to fill the earth and skies with sins and you turn back to Him sincerely, He will forgive you right at the moment. That's who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes His own mercy in the Quran, in Surah Al-A'raf, وَرَحْمَتِي وَسِعَتْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ. And my mercy encompasses everything. His mercy is more vast than our own minds, the whole entire universe. And going back to the importance of not wasting time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down a whole surah for us, which is called the time, which is Wal Asr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said in the Quran in Surah Al-Asr, which everybody knows here, Wal Asr, by time, Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Indeed, all of mankind is in loss. Illa alladhina amanu. Except for those who do good deeds. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. Except for those who believe, وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ, and do good deeds. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ. And they advise one another to the truth. وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. And they advise one another to the patience. One of the Salaf, the righteous people who came before us a long time ago, he mentions in his book that upon Surah Al-Asr, he was pondering and reflecting upon Surah Al-Asr, and it did not make any sense to him. That why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, think about it, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the universe, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has many great creations. He could have sworn by the Kaaba, He could have sworn by His Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and then proclaimed His message. But he said, how did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swear, and why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swear by Wal Asr, by time? And he thought and thought and thought. And then all of a sudden he's surprised, and his wife comes to him. And she says to him that go to the marketplace and buy some ice for the kids. Because it's so hot in the summer that if they were to drink the water, their throats will be scorched from the heat of the water. So then that righteous man, he proceeds to the marketplace, and in the open it's called the Zawiya in Saudi, Maidan. So it's like a big ground where people are selling different items. It's like a whole marketplace. And over there's one old man screaming and crying like he lost a loved one or a little baby. And there's two parties, two big teams of around a great number of people, and they're fighting with each other and yelling and screaming at each other. And he's going to the right side and holding his hands like this and telling them, please stop. And then going to the other side and said, please calm down, please stop. So this guy, he looks at them and he starts laughing. He said, what is this old man doing? Let me go and at least try to teach him some sense, some common sense. So he goes to the old man and he says, oh old man, what are you doing? These two people are fighting in the heat and you're wasting your energy on them? They're losers. He said, no, I'm a loser. He said, how are you the loser? Explain to me. He said, these two parties came just like you would buy ice from me in the middle of the heat. And something broke up and a fight started and now it's a riot. And they're out of control. And if this goes on for a few more moments, all my ice will be melted and I'm going to be the biggest loser. And then he said, Wallahi, by Allah, now I know why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swore by wal asr. Because our life is like an ice cube. Same with Shahr Ramadan. And Shahr Ramadan is even faster ice cube. The holy days and nights, they go even faster than we can even imagine. So remember, ayyam al-ma'dudat, limited days. So if you were wasting your time in the 20 days before, then please turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and listen to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His message for you in the Quran and in the Hadith. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, number one, before I mention the ayah that I want to, think about this for a second in Surah Al-Anbiya. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, لَقَدْ أَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكُمْ كِتَابًا فِيهِ ذِكْرُكُمْ. Indeed, I have revealed down a book. In it, I mentioned you. فِيهِ ذِكْرُكُمْ. In it is your mention. أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ. Do you not reason? Do you not use your aql, your intellect? So, number one, Ramadan is the month of Quran, and it is where the Quran was revealed, when the Quran was revealed. But the Quran is for yourself and not for yourself. It's not you open it when somebody dies or when there's a wedding or something. This is not the way we treat Quran. The way we treat Quran, the same way Quran will treat us. If we leave Quran, the Quran will leave us before we even think about leaving it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Zumar, He says, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِيَ الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Say, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, to my slaves, which is us, who have transgressed or wasted themselves, لَا تَقْنَطُوا مِنْ رَحْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Do not despair, meaning do not lose hope from the mercy of Allah. أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ means those who have transgressed the sacred limits of Allah. This is Allah's message to the biggest sinners and all type of sinners. لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله إن الله يغفر الذنوب جميعا. Indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives all sins. إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. Indeed, it is He who is the most forgiving and the most merciful. And also, some of the ulama, there is an opinion that somebody who despairs from the mercy of Allah, that believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not forgive him, this can head to kufr. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran, He said, إِنَّهُ لَا يَيْأَسُ مِنْ رَوْحِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا الْقَوْمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. That's what Yaqub alayhi salam said to his kids. Indeed, he does not despair from the mercy of Allah except for a disbelieving qawm, a disbelieving people, meaning people who are kafirs, who don't even believe in Allah. So if you believe in Allah, you believe in His mercy. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a very beautiful hadith al-Qudsi, hadith al-Qudsi is such an amazing hadith where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addresses us Himself. Not like hadith al-Nabawi. Hadith al-Nabawi is when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, it's a prophetic hadith, when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is saying it. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, Ya ibadi, O my slaves, إِنَّكُمْ تُخْطِئُونَ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Indeed, you are sinning in the night and in the day. But the reality is, I want to give a little reality check on this. Yes, we are sinning in the night and the day, but now in the world, the fast-paced world we're living in, the phones and the gadgets and the TVs we have in our home, we're basically sinning 24/7, you could say, practically. Even in a holy month like Ramadan. Ramadan back 30, 40 years ago was very different. People didn't have TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and all these TV channels. 200, some TVs have 500 channels on the cable. So somehow there's always some sin going on. You're going to the marketplace, there's music everywhere. It's a very different era that we live in, a very fast-paced era. So we're basically sinning 24/7. But still, that doesn't mean this hadith will stay till the day of judgment. That's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّكُمْ تُخْطِئُونَ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. Indeed, you are sinning in the night and in the day. And this is the very beautiful part. وَأَنَا, and as for me, أَغْفِرُ الذُّنُوبَ جَمِيعًا, I forgive all sins. And then the most important part is after that. That it is wajib upon us to act upon this. أَسْتَغْفِرُونِي. So just ask me for forgiveness. أَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ. I will forgive you. And some of the ulama say that one of the greatest gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us is the ni'mah of tawbah. The blessing of tawbah. Think about it. If there wasn't tawbah, then people would be committing suicide. Look at the